Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the beautiful weather. It is exam weather here in Tramore. What's it like in Cork, Frank?
It's stunning. It's stunning. Yeah, it's a good point. I'd forgotten about that because, of course, I don't have teenagers, but it's always stunning weather in Ireland whenever school kids are locked in a room having to do an exam.
I know, but they're locked in a room with computers these days as well as exams, so they don't even care. I would say it must be terrible. I don't give a shit. So
Yeah,
there you
yeah.
go.
Weather? What's weather?
I know, yeah. Outside? No, I don't go outside. It's been another incredible week in the world of AI. It just doesn't stop going. I certainly don't have to hold my breath anymore. My God, do you remember? I had to hold my breath for 2 or 3 months. I couldn't even catch a breath these days. There's so many things happening.
That's true. That's very, very true. Yeah.
All right.
Do you
Well, I
want to
give you a
focus
quick
on some of the stuff that has been announced?
listen to me. And again, this is just a subset of all of the things that we have found this week. So we should have some countdown music when we do this. We should try and organize something like that. But anyway, here we go. So this week's honorable mentions go to NVIDIA releases the Llama Nematron Ultra, a dense 253 billion parameter model, outperforms all open models, including R1 and even the upcoming Llama 4 behemoths. A new company called Deep Cognito are doing another straight shot for super intelligence. And they're using a method called iterated distillation and amplification. They call it IDA. I think that's what Ilya saw. It's this thing that we talked about in the show before. It's very clever. They might actually make it work. Anthropic has announced a new max plan for Claude users. I think it's going to cost $100 or $200. I can't remember. It's something similar. They're going
Both.
to charge more.
Yeah, both. I think there's a kind of a like get 10 times the amount of prompts for 100 or get 20 times the amount for 200 plus access to like early features and stuff, which is it's all very interesting. I was actually chatting with Alistair McDermott earlier,
Mm.
and let's say hello, by the way. And he was kind of pointing out that, we were kind of promised that like we would be getting better AI for cheaper, but actually the prices are going up. So it's just interesting.
Yeah, it is. He's not wrong. And also, I would say that's particularly true with Anthropic. I would have expected to get more. The limits should have gone up in Anthropic, and because remember they released the Haku model, and that was incredible. It was peanuts, and was very. We haven't got a Haku model in ages from them. Anyway, more to come, I'm sure. Keros, a new company, is building an AI agent framework, which is very similar to Microsoft Copilot, which was pulled. So what this framework will do is it will record what you do on your computer, and it will then automatically create an agent in the background, which automates you, Frank. So we can automate you next week just by listening to you and automating you, which sounds great to me.
I'll be really curious if this is real, if it really works. But also kind of non-AI related, Justin. I had a quick look into this, and wow, did it make me feel old?
Oh,
Because there was a video from the founders about this product, what it did, and
yes.
I watched the video and I was like, wait, two 12-year-olds invented this? And then I was like, oh no, they're not 12. I'm just really old now.
I know. Welcome to the new world. Okay, we keep going. Meta releases two Llama 4 AI models. They released Llama 4 Scout, a new model capable of fitting on a single NVIDIA H100 chip, and Llama 4 Maverick, which is akin to GPT-4o and Gemini 2 Flash. It says they're in the process of also releasing Llama 4 Behemoth, which you can guess is going to be the biggest, bestest, baddest, but was released, I will say, to very questionable reviews, the models. And our favorite controversial AI, what's his name, Jan LeCun, had to come out and say, no, we didn't game the benchmarks and the model is good and there was a couple of quirks. So, I'm not sure
Interesting.
actually what to think of that one. Very interesting.
I mean, what's interesting, just really briefly, like what's really interesting about those is uh, sorry, what's it called? The context
So,
window. So it's like
yeah.
10 million?
Yeah.
Um,
10 million
so yeah,
tokens.
exactly, yeah. And I think the leader at the moment, or the leader before this, was like Google Gemini, which was 1 million,
Yes.
I think.
1 million tokens. Correct.
And that basically just means that like it can remember much, much longer conversations. Like your initial prompt could be a library of books with a 10 million token.
Sure.
So yeah,
And it brings into question actually your RAG application. So at the moment, you go and you search a database, you try and find the most relevant documents. But if you've got a $10 million or 10 million token context window and it's not expensive to do it, why wouldn't you just throw all of the data into the context window and let the AI decide what's the most relevant piece of data? So that's kind of interesting too.
Well, it's kind of cool. The other, very briefly, the other interesting thing that about Meta was, we have not had Meta AI here in Europe, and they are saying that, a couple of months ago, they announced that they were going to start rolling it out to Europe, but that they were having a hard time getting through all the regulatory confusion.
Killer pain.
And today I noticed that on WhatsApp, I got a message saying, hey, I'm Meta AI. You can ask me stuff. Meta AI through the browser, still not available in my country, but I can now chat to it in WhatsApp, which is interesting. They are clearly slowly but surely starting to roll out here.
Very cool. Okay, brilliant. Can't wait to give that a try. A new project called the Agentica project is releasing what they have called Deep Coder, a 14 billion parameter model. Now, this one is interesting because they say that it is on a par with O1 and O3 Mini when it comes to coding and math. But they're not just releasing the model, they're also releasing the code, they're releasing the training data recipe and the actual data set itself. So if it is a really good model, it's a great way to learn how to train models if you're into that sort of thing. And total kudos for releasing everything, including the training data set. Europeans should take note because I think that will be a great way to catch up in the AI race that we're currently involved in. Loads and loads of Google news this week. So Google released Google Gemini 2.5 in the AI studio. I've not, unfortunately, had a chance to really properly play with it, but everything I have read tells me that this is the best model, not by a little bit, but by a lot. Based on all this, better at coding, it's better at writing, it's better at doing anything. Apparently, this model is the best. Everything that I've read this week says that Google has gone. Ethan Mollick, for instance, was saying that Google has gone from a year and a half ago being a total laggard. And remember all those things, the images with English or brown and all that sort of rubbish. But now to having the best models, the models that just and we've talked about this before. They have so much data, they should be very good at making AI. They seem to be getting there. They also released a thing this week called the Firebase Studio, which is actually what I really want to play with. It is a web-based development into a IDE, they call it, interactive development environment. It's for creating agents, and it uses this new Gemini 2.5 in the background. That looks like something that's very exciting, and I can't wait to play with. And they also released. Sorry, do you want to get in? They also released one
on the Firebase Studio thing. So it's like it's for listeners who are not like developers or whatever. It's the idea is that like if you have an idea for an app, you could go to Firebase Studio and say, "Hey, make me an app that does X, Y, or Z," and it'll code the app, and you can publish it on the web. And it's available for free, which is interesting because a lot of these tools at the moment, there are a lot of other tools at the moment that are paid. It's not meant to be as like advanced or as brilliant yet as something like, say, Cursor, which is one of the tools that developers use that does the same thing. But a lot of the people that I follow are kind of saying, yes, but it's Google, it will get better. And then what happens to all these other
Let's hope it does, right? Let's hope they don't do the Google thing, which just kill it after a while, or what they did with the interactive voice thing. Remember that? And they said it was really cool, and everybody loved it, and then it sort of died a bit of a death, and whatever. So let's hope that they do it. I'm going to send you to sleep with this one, Frank. Google also released this week an agent-to-agent framework. Why do I care? I hear you roar. Your artistic glasses. It's kind of like the internet works because we have protocols, and it's the boring donkey work that makes everything work together. So Anthropic, a couple of weeks ago, they released a thing called MCP, which was Model Context Protocol, and it gave you a standard way to look up tools. And lots of companies, including their competition, OpenAI, have adopted the same standard. Now, Google have released an agent-to-agent protocol. So if you've got multiple agents and they need to talk to each other, it's almost like, think of us talking, or it's standard protocol. We use TCP, let's say, in the network. Now they have a way for agents to talk to each other. This will become important in the future as we build more and more complicated agents. And we're going to talk a little bit later about why it'll be important in a practical application to do with hallucination. They also released, I think, VO2, Frank. How'd you get on with that?
So yeah, I mean, so they had their Google Cloud conference. I can't remember what it's called, but basically very much aimed at developers. And a lot of these announcements, a lot of these
Yeah,
products were announced at that conference. So there's been
yeah,
a whole load of Google stuff, which is interesting because like last week we were saying OpenAI had managed to completely overshadow Google's release of their latest Gemini model. But now Google are dominating the feed again this week with all of these announcements from this conference. But tucked
yep.
away quietly in there, I came across in one of the articles I was reading about it that they were releasing VO2 in Europe through the Vertex AI interface. Now I didn't
Yep.
know what that meant. I didn't know what the Vertex AI interface was because
Yeah.
it's a developer interface. It's for training models and experimenting with models, and I think it's designed really for enterprise level stuff. I think, um,
They
but I
upgraded it
thought,
this week
oh,
too, by the way.
I thought to myself, look, VO2 is meant to be one of the best AI video generators available, except that it's not available in Europe. So now that I had this opportunity to try it, I thought, okay, I'm going to check this out. So I
Yeah.
went to Vertex AI, found my way to Vertex AI somehow because it's not easy. It's
Mhm.
a really complicated user
It is.
interface. It is not designed for the average user. It's clearly a developer tool.
Mhm.
I assume that's why it's so complex. Managed to find VO2 in there, and
Right.
it had the ability. So a lot of this stuff is really designed for like generating API keys and
Yep.
building stuff, etc. But you can interact with the models on the platform through the browser, and that's what I did. So I did two prompts. Now bear in mind, I frequently use like Kling AI video, and that's like, I don't know, I can get a whole load of prompts for like $8 a month or something.
Yeah, yeah.
So I put in these two prompts and I was like, I wonder, is this going to cost me money? That was at the back of my head. But then I was like, VO2 has been available for free through other interfaces in the US for a long time. Surely not. And I did two prompts. Now, luckily, I was really caught for time. So
Yeah.
otherwise, otherwise, I would have been in there playing with it all day because it was really good. The videos were brilliant. 8-second videos. Um, from a text prompt. I wasn't even doing image to video, which is what I would normally do because the results tend to be better. This was just text prompt, 8-second video back, and they were phenomenal. Like they were amazing. I was blown
What sort of
away.
videos were they? Are these photorealistic videos? Are they cartoony type videos? What sort of videos were they?
I tried both, but it was the photorealistic ones. It was the real people doing real things in a video that blew me away. Really, really good. Like incredible. But two prompts. I wake up today and I think, oh, you know what? I might play with that some more. And I went back into the Vertex interface and I saw you have now, you are now being, billed for stuff because you've enabled this. So I went into the billing and it was 50 euros. I spent 50 euros prompting
Which
VO2 twice for two 8-second videos. 50
wow.
bucks. And
Wow.
there's no indication in the interface that you were about to incur a cost. And now that I know I'm about to incur a cost, there's no visibility of how much that cost might be. So so so
That's
anyone curious
bizarre.
about PO2, I would say don't try it out through Vertex AI. Wait until it arrives here in other interfaces.
That's incredible. And it's totally, I mean, that's not economic to be paying 50. I mean, it'd be cheaper to get some actors to do that.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
good lord. Okay, well that's very sad. I paid a fiver for Suno, just so you know, last weekend, and I spent the whole
Sumo is
weekend
so
playing with
good.
Suno. It's brilliant. So it's so much fun. I literally entertained for the whole weekend. My kids were not entertained because every time they walk past, people like, come in, have a listen to this. It's really cool. And then make them sit there for half an hour. But yeah, Suno was amazing. That's the music generator. And I think I still have about 1,500 credits left. So
Yeah, so you do not in this day and age, you do not expect to be paying 25 quid a pop for a prompt, even for video generation. Like that's
yeah.
it seems
Yeah,
inexpensive.
look, you also expect to kind of pay for, especially for these ones at the start, you expect to sort of put credit onto your account and then you're given X amount of credits and
Don't
that sort of trades down.
don't get me started. I on one page it said I had 250 credits, and when I went to another page it said, yeah, you do have 250 credits, but they're expired credits.
Jesus. And just so you, I mean, maybe for the public service announcement, in the Vertex Studio, if you select the experimental model, so they have hyphen exp, then it's free. But if you don't, you'll get charged. So if you're selecting the model and you
I
want a
wish
free
I
one,
had spoken to you. I wish I had spoken to you before going in. Yeah.
should have called me. Should have called me, Frank.
I did come across completely
Yeah.
different AI video generation news. And this was a research paper. And basically it was saying that like current models, they really struggle with like longer video generation, and they really struggle with now, like, so OpenAI's Sora, for example, attempted this with their storyboards, but I have tried those storyboards and they do not work. And so the thing
Yeah.
is, it's difficult to generate videos that have like, different scenes within the one video and tell a narrative by, you and me 1 minute in the house, then walking out of the house, then walking down the street, and then entering a shop. That kind of stuff
Yep.
is really, really difficult for AI video generation. But these guys have found like a new method of generating video, and they trained it on Tom and Jerry cartoons.
Yes.
And they were able to generate a minute of Tom and Jerry cartoons that certainly appeared to have like a narrative arc and change scenes, etc. Now, I came across this through Ethan Mollick, who we talk about
Yep.
a lot.
Yeah.
And he said, he pointed out that like because it's trained on Tom and Jerry, historical Tom and Jerry cartoons, they're old cartoons, so they already have kind of aged artifacts, and therefore some of the AI artifacts are you're more forgiving of the AI artifacts because it's these old cartoons.
That's a good point.
So it's not perfect, and you can see the artifacts, but they kind of get away with it because it's vintage cartoons. Still very impressive though. And they were saying that like it was their resources that limited them to 1 minute rather than a technological limit. So if they can get more resources into this research, they think they might be able to do much longer videos with really good coherence and consistency, and the ability to have a better narrative arc.
I mean, that's pretty exciting, because I'm going to call out one of my own predictions that didn't go, that was totally wrong, but this is a step in the right direction. So I remember when OpenAI released about a year ago that the first of their sort of vision and models and so on. And I remember extrapolating that, well, if the technology keeps going, we should get close to movie length videos by, I think, about now. And we're not there at all, right? It's taking way longer. But this feels like, my acid test for this is my favorite books are Skullduggery Pleasant. They're written by Derek Landy. They're absolutely brilliant. They're hilarious. I don't know. They're written to be a movie. And for whatever reason, they were never made into a movie. I cannot wait. And this seems to be a step in the direction of getting to work. I just give it a book and it can give me a movie.
Yeah. And there was another quick one that caught my eye was one that there was a headline: former Snap exec launches Higgsfield. So it's another AI video generation thing, and it is trained on Hollywood camera movement. So a lot of AI videos feel a little bit static and a little bit kind of, very, very, very dull camera pans and predictable zooms. This is trained on Hollywood camera movement, and so it creates much more dynamic video. So again, another step in the right direction for what you're talking about. Also, you mentioned that we talked about this, about a year ago. We should have said at the top of the episode, this is episode 52. Now, we've missed an episode here or there, but that means we've been going now for over a year,
which is longer than most AI companies.
So happy birthday to us.
Happy birthday, Frank. This is as an AI podcast host. There's a couple of ironclad rules of AI, and that is that it gets cheaper by 90% every 12 months. It gets about 10 times more capable every 12 months, and we get grayer by about 150% every 12 months, trying to keep up with all the news. And I can listen. Enough of your arty stuff, right? Let's get back to the nerding. One of my bugbears is when people say, "Oh my God, we can't use AI because of hallucinations, and it's going to spit out whatever false answer comes into its head," and it's not true, right? That's just bad system design. And so, there's many ways that I say that you can do it. You can use RAG. You can give the AI an out. You can just tell it. If you don't know the answer, just say, "I don't know the answer." That's the best one. You can get it to ask you clarifying questions. you can create a tool, say, to ask the human, and it will ask you for clarifying questions rather than just spew out something. An academic paper was published this week where it was just another approach to this. And this is why I said that the Google agent protocol, right, where the agents could talk to each other, is important. So what this paper showed was that if you had 4 AI agents, so one generating the answer and another one fact checking it and another making sure for consistency, another, I can't remember exactly what the 4 were, but it would really reduce the amount of hallucination by 2,800%, which basically means it's gone, right? Because hallucination in modern models these days is already down. I mean, I think out of the box it's down at like 4 or 5%. It's like in low single digits. So if you can reduce that by another 2,800%, it's going to be more reliable than me or you, both of us put together.
That is really impressive. And because I am one of those people who says we got to be really careful with AI because it will hallucinate. And so I found this really interesting because I would push back on things like RAG and some of the other methods you mentioned, which I think, are good ways to take a little bit of extra care. But I mean, there have been a lot of studies showing that RAG does not reduce hallucinations. And so I think this was a really interesting method. And if this becomes a kind of de facto way that systems are built, then it could be really interesting. It will also presumably increase the cost of using AI. So because you're using, like, I know each agent used a different LLM. So now for one prompt, you're really doing like at least 4 prompts just for one initial response. Yeah.
Yeah, you can, right? But there's lots of, okay. So again, I know that it does appear that the price is going up, but it's not, and it will get cheaper. And you can use prompt caching now and so on, which reduces the price again by 90%. There's lots of ways. And also, just on your point on RAG, you're absolutely correct. I wouldn't be a huge fan of RAG either. And with the bigger context windows, I'm much more in favor of just throwing everything into the context window. They do these tests, by the way, these big context windows called needle in a haystack tests. So they don't just make it a 10 million token context window and say, off you go, have at it. They do tests to make sure that it does. The older models, for instance, like Claude 2, paid way more attention to the stuff that was towards the end of the context window as opposed to at the top.
Right.
That doesn't happen anymore. Right? They can engineer all of that out of it. So just, I echo what you're saying there. So 2 interesting news is to do with, we haven't even mentioned OpenAI, and we're 22 and a half minutes into the show, which must be a record. But there's two things that happened this week with OpenAI that are interesting. First, they released the long-term memory feature, which I thought they were going to do a couple of weeks ago.
What do you think? What do I think? Well, first of all, we don't get it, is the first thing I think. Europe is one of the places that don't get it because of, and I think that's a good thing. I think that I'm assuming that there's probably privacy issues or something there that need to be ironed out before we get it, and I'd be very glad if they iron out.
On an unrelated but somewhat related note, right? Good news from, what's her name, Van der Leyen, the European head of the European Union or whatever. They're taking the GDPR laws and they're throwing them on a bonfire next week or 2. So hopefully we'll get more goodies from OpenAI once that's done.
They're throwing them on a bonfire. What are they doing? They're streamlining them, making it easier to comply, I think.
Hopefully it's something to streamline them with a big red pen and just going, no need for that anymore.
But yes, we're not getting this memory feature, and I'm not sad about that. Not only because I want the privacy issues or whatever's preventing it from rolling out here. I want that sorted out before I get it. I think that's good. But also, I'm not sure I want it. It's not very, right now we have memory within ChatGPT, which we were also delayed in getting, but we did get it eventually, and that. I don't mind that because I can go in and I can look at the memory and I can see what's in there and I can just say, that's not relevant, that's not relevant, that's not relevant. But if I now have that memory turned on, and if we get this new feature, I believe the way it works is I will have this memory that I can check and take stuff out of, but that's separate from this new memory, which just kind of invisibly knows things about past chats and invisibly retains information about me. And I can ask ChatGPT, well, what are you basing this on? And apparently it will tell me, but I
Mm.
don't really have any control over it. And, being a bit of a control freak, I kind of feel like I actually want that control over how the AI interacts with me. But it remains to be seen, because I do accept that it might improve the experience. And when I end up using it, then I might be like, this is a much better experience. It's fine. Leave it off. Let it do its thing.
Frank, from your point of view, it's way worse than that. Way worse. You need to think about this more, right? So there's two reasons why you should be absolutely terrified of the memory feature within ChatGPT. The first one,
Oh, great.
so the two reasons, the first is vendor lock-in, right? That's just an old-fashioned thing, right? So the more you use it and the more it knows about you, the more you're likely to get hooked to it just at a superficial level. It's going to give you more relevant answers to your, right? And I myself would worry about, I don't like vendor lock-in. I like to be able to move around, right? But that's it. That's, I'm sure that's the economic rationale of why they're doing it, right? But the reason why you should be totally terrified of what's happening here is, do you remember we did the test? Was it last week or 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, where we asked ChatGPT to create images of, are you sentient and whatever, and it would create these images and sort of give the impression that it was sentient. But then when you dug into it a bit more, actually what it was doing was it was just reflecting your biases back to you. Now, so what actually is going to happen here is, over these long-term memories, you are going to create an echo chamber of one of you. And it is going to pick up subtle hints within your conversations of your likes and dislikes and your biases and what you want to get out and everything. And it's going to give them to you without question. And you're not going to know why or how. And so it becomes very difficult to evaluate these models in a lot of ways, because the answer that I get to a question and the answer that you get to a question will be totally different, because we both have totally different biases. And that should, I think it's great, but it should scare the crap out of you.
It does, and I'm not sure why you think it's great. But this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say that my concern is that there's no transparency and I don't have control over it. For exactly those reasons, that like it's subtly shifting, as you say, it's subtly shifting its responses to cater for you, but you're not in any, you have no control over that, and you have to question it. You have to see it and then question it in order to make any headway in figuring out why it's doing that. So yeah. I totally agree with you, and I'm not quite sure why it doesn't bother you.
Well, because, Google came up with this thing years ago, right? Where the same thing happens in Google. It's just a little less subtle, right? But, where, if I type in some a Google search and you type in a Google search, you'll both get different results based on our search history. And I'm more likely to get the thing that I want, and you're more likely to get the thing that you want, because it knows more about us.
But isn't it true that thanks to European regulation, we were then given an interface which allowed us to see exactly what was stored and have the ability to remove stuff and even to opt out of anything being stored?
I hate those cookie banner things. But anyway, yes, possibly, whatever. Let's move on. Also, OpenAI are in the news, a bit of hot water this week, because the Financial Times reports that they have been reducing the amount of time they spend on safety testing. But that's not important now. Why would that matter?
I mean, why would that matter? I mean, we knew this, right? We knew this already, but now it's like being confirmed yet again that they do not place any value on safety and security. We knew this because like their safety and security teams were exiting in the droves and giving out about it. And we heard already that previous...
That probably explains why they spend so little time testing it. There's nobody left to test it.
Well, there's that too. Yeah. So we knew already that previous models were already having a shorter safety evaluation window, and now I mean, what they're talking about putting out a new model, and I think I read that there might be like 2 weeks or something to do safety evaluations, and the person was pointing out that like less capable models that were released in the past, they had 6 months to evaluate them, and some very, very serious concerns were only surfaced after like 2 months into the safety evaluations. And now they're saying, yeah, do this in 2 weeks and then we're releasing.
Yeah, I
with
do. Part
with
of
a
me
more
goes,
powerful model.
yeah, part of me goes that, I mean, there is a school of thought which says that you only really find out what can go wrong by putting it out there. And so the best thing to do is to put it out there. And okay, I'm somewhat in favor of that. The fact that it's closed source and they're doing that kills that argument a little bit, because if it was an open source project and you put it out there and then you found issues, then the community goes to fix the issues and it becomes a virtuous
Yeah,
cycle.
I
If it's a
mean that's where,
closed source piece of software, their incentive is to hide the problems. But there it is.
and and I take your point. If you are releasing a piece of software, that is a customer relationship management system or something, and then you can put it out there, you let the users use it, and then you can squash the bugs as they come in from users.
Yeah.
Brilliant. When one of the possible problems of the technology that you're releasing into the world is that somebody will be able to create a biological weapon and release it into the wild, then that's not a bug you want to be squashing as it pops up.
Yeah, I think the risk of that's very low. By the way, I saw an AI generated conversation between Einstein and what's the other dude that he invented the nuclear bomb? What was his name?
Oh,
Guy with the hat, Oppenheimer.
yes.
It was really interesting. They were on a podcast, Joe Rogan's studio, and had the two guys in it. It was brilliant. Saw that about an hour and a half ago. Fantastic. You're a big fan of UTIs, and I see that Germany has completed a new UTI study.
So for anyone who's new to listening to the show, the UTIs that I'm in favor of are universal thriving incomes, as opposed to universal basic incomes, because I think AI has the potential to take over the entire economic layer of society, and if so, we are going to need to be looked after. So, that's kind of why we're talking about universal basic income experiments on an AI show, because I think we're both in agreement that something is going to be needed. Something is going to be needed to support people.
Two.
Um,
Yep.
and yeah, you drew my attention to a German study. It was run over years. It's one of the more interesting ones I've seen, because people got 1,200 to, I think, did they get 1,200 a month? I thought it was a bracket of, yeah, maybe it was 1,200 a month that
They
they
got
got.
1,200 a month, but the interesting thing wasn't that that was a substantial portion of their income. So their income was 1,100 to 2,600, and then they got an
Right.
additional 1,200. So it wasn't like you got an extra €50. This was a significant
Yeah.
portion of your overall income.
Because a lot of these studies have had like significantly lesser amounts, which is
Yes.
harder to gauge then, because what are you going to do? What are you going to do with an extra couple of hundred? There's a big difference in what you can actually do, and the results were really good. The people who were involved in the experiment were happier, healthier, saved more, gave more, enjoyed more social time, and did not work less than the control group. So a lot echoing what the or not OpenAI study, but the I can't remember but the study that Sam Altman was involved in, which was kind of similar, and also had very positive results. I think there was a few negative things that people latched onto, but as far as I remember, that study also said that people were happier, healthier, saved more, gave more, and enjoyed more social time, and
Just
didn't work less.
can I very facetiously just point out, and this is a very facetious comment, but can I just point out that the study was done in Germany, and I would like to see the same study repeated in Italy, just to see if it had the same outcome, because they're a bit more chilled down in Italy.
Why? Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
let's have another piece. Let's have another limoncello. Yeah, it's great.
I don't think you're going far enough with Italy. I think it would need to be done in Ireland. You know?
Let's do it here. I'll sign up first. Um, Big exciting news. When I was growing up, one of my favorite shows on TV was Robot Wars. Do you ever watch Robot Wars? Great crack.
No, I'm familiar with it. I'm familiar with it. I never actually watched it.
So Robot Wars was you would have a team, they would put together these little robots and they'd fight each other until the death in a sort of an octagon type thing, and they'd compete against each other until we had a winner. So we know that China have this robotic company called Unitree who've been doing amazing things. They've released news this week. They released a video of, first they had one of their robots training against one of those things that you see Mike Tyson boxing every now and then or whatever, those bouncy things. And then it had a human boxing against one of the robots. And it was brilliant. Like the robot was ducking and diving, and the human was hitting him, and the robot was hitting him back. and then the
And it was
human
kickboxing.
knocked him over. See, the human knocked him over, and then the robot gets back up again and starts boxing him back again. It was just brilliant entertainment. Not only that, but what they've said is within a month they are going to start televising live matches head to head between the robots.
That, I mean, so they because I was having a look at those videos that you sent me, and like some of them were two robots boxing each other, grand, but the human boxing the robot, I was like, that's a very brave human. Like what kind of waiver did they sign before getting in the ring with a robot kickboxer? It's kind of nuts. And when you put it together with the other story you sent me, it's kind of terrifying.
Yes. So, and the other story also relates to the same company, Unitree. Unfortunately, the same company, it was discovered this week, also had a backdoor installed so that anybody could go in and take over the robots and do anything they wanted with them. That's a problem.
Yeah.
I'll grant you that, Frank. That's
So
a
they had
problem.
these robot dogs, and anyone could, if they were online, anyone could like hack in, see where the robot was, and turn on the camera on the robot to see what it could see. Um, Now,
And that's a shame it's only a camera, because those were the robots that were used for my favorite AI device, the Terminator, which had a flamethrower stuck on
the
top of it.
fire-breathing robot, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Those are the Unitree dogs.
Now I did see, right? I did also on a. I mean, obviously this is a serious note anyway, but on an even more serious note, I think a lot of the headlines were like, "Ooh, backdoor into Chinese robot. We told you this would happen. The Chinese are going to spy on us all, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." But I found, I did find one article that pointed out that they were not able to decisively say whether the company intended to create a surveillance backdoor or if it was simply a case of sloppy architecture and sloppy programming, because they also found that robot dogs from major US research universities, including MIT, Princeton, and Carnegie Mellon, could have been vulnerable at some point with the same kind of backdoor. And so I just find that interesting because, as I've kind of said on this program before, I just feel like there's a lot of like AI reds under the bed type headlines going on at the moment. And there's a lot of posturing from the US about this whole race with China and how things like Sam Altman saying that training on copyright data is a matter of national security because China will get ahead and take over the world, etc. So I just think it is worth pointing out that yes, this was a Chinese company, Chinese robots with a backdoor, but the sane rational look at it says yes, but it might not have been on purpose, and we think the same thing might have been in lots of US robots.
Never, I mean, as a rule, never assign to malice what can easily be done with incompetence, and this may well have just been plain incompetence.
Yes,
and
but
to those same
to
people,
put the two stories together, we are looking at kickboxing robots that could have a backdoor into it that could allow anybody to take it over. That would not be good. That would not be great.
Yeah. I don't mind. I think it'll be fine. I'm looking forward to watching the robot versus robot war thing. And it'll be great. I'm totally at peace with this, right? I have yet to see something that's really made me worried.
If that doesn't make you worried, I just don't know what will, Justin. But I'm sure there'll be something else that I can throw at you next week.
We'll give it a go. Frank, pleasure as always. Look forward to chatting to you next week.
Chat to you then. Cheers, Justin.
Yeah.